Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Dr. Lisa Moore. I'm a physical therapist. I'm the founder of Brickhouse Bones, and I specialize in bone health, exercise, and education. And I'm so honored to be joined here today by the founders of Scene Nutrition. Now, Scene Nutrition is a small startup, a woman-owned business that's created the first calcium chew made only from real foods to support bone health. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. We're both really excited to be on here and answer some questions.
Yeah, so this all started a few weeks ago. I did an honest review of your product, and it was really something I absolutely love to share with my group and with my audience, and the feedback was outstanding. But as you would expect, there were a lot of questions. And so as you heard all those questions, you guys were really gracious enough to come on and answer all of them. So that's what started all of this. So let me introduce you both. All right, Adrienne Bitar, PhD, co-founder and co-CEO, is an expert on diet and food studies, earning her BA from UC Berkeley, PhD from Stanford University, and postdoctoral fellowship and lectureship in history from Cornell University. Her book, Diet and the Disease of Civilization, is widely regarded as the leading cultural history of American diet. After her mother fractured her second bone due to osteoporosis, Adrienne was committed to preventing bone fractures through real food calcium supplementation. Dr. Jennifer Hahn, PharmD, co-founder and co-CEO. Dr. Jennifer Hahn is a dual residency trained, board-certified clinical pharmacist who specializes in obesity, diabetes, pain, and osteoporosis. She earned her BS and PharmD from UC San Diego and completed her postgraduate residency training at Tufts Medical Center and advanced postgraduate residency training with specialization in ambulatory care at the Veterans Affairs Health System in Los Angeles. After being diagnosed with premenopausal osteoporosis in 2020, she set out to revolutionize the calcium supplement industry by harnessing real food calcium to support stronger bones. Wow, what bios, you guys. It's wonderful. What I love this is that you have a tremendous amount of knowledge, education to understand the physiological processes, but also this is personal to both of you.
Yeah, very, very personal.
Let's go dive in a bit into the question. So we know, I will start out by saying I do not take and have not taken a synthetic calcium supplement in the past. I always wanted to get my calcium from real food. And because the entourage effect of all of the components in that food, the fiber, the micronutrients, the polyphenols, the other nutritional factors within that food, that entourage effect is something you can't harness and take one ingredient out, synthesize it, and expect to have the same result, right?
Yeah.
You've managed to preserve this relationship in your product. Yeah, yes. Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, to share a little bit before we get into the questions is I came about this from both the perspective of a patient because of my premenopausal osteoporosis diagnosis at age 29. And then also from the perspective of a clinical pharmacist. So my endocrinologist, the first thing that she did to me during our visit was go through a calcium diet intake history. And she's like, you're not eating enough calcium because I'm lactose intolerant, which we'll talk about, and things. And so I had to walk through the pharmacy and look for a synthetic calcium supplement. And I just didn't like what was on the market because of various reasons. They're huge horse pills. I can't tolerate them well, and it's just not enjoyable. And so we came together and we're like, why isn't there an easier way to eat your calcium from food? We both know, and you just highlighted so well, is that foods have so many other nutrients that are necessary for absorption and dissolution of those nutrients. And so we took milk, we took a vitamin D mushrooms, and we put it together to create something that's actually enjoyable and something that someone wants to eat for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, that's the key. Is making it simple, portable, easy, and you know exactly what's out.
Adherence is so important. So like we know that if you find something unpleasant, you're not going to adhere to the commitment that calcium requires. So what we really appreciate knowing that our customers are like reliably, consistently adhering to the new calcium chew they found in their lives.
Yes, absolutely. Because sometimes if you consider the volume of food you have to eat or drink to meet that goal, and you look at your chew and see what you can accomplish, it makes it seem way like fewer hurdles to meeting your goal each day, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I love it. And I honestly say it tastes good. It's delicious. It has a nice texture. It's not sweet, but it's really well balanced. It's really well formulated. I would love to know how many iterations it took to get you to that.
I don't know if you'll have enough time for that. But a lot of iterations, a lot of help from experts like food studies experts and food scientists here at Cornell, where we took both, like, we need something that tastes good, but also performs well and will help adherence. So it was like multiple factors all in one, but we're happy with our product.
You should be. Yeah. There's so many factors that people would never consider into coming up with the final product, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So if someone is lactose intolerant, can they eat your chew?
Yes, they can. So let me explain that a little bit further. The way that we use minerals from milk is that a lot of the lactose, about maybe over 90% of the lactose, is removed when we're getting the minerals from milk. So we did the calculation and we're like, okay, exactly how much lactose is in one chew? Because this is important for people to know.
Yeah.
So one chew has about 1/4 gram of lactose, or 0.2 grams, which is very small. And to put this in a frame of reference, someone who's lactose intolerant can comfortably consume up to 12 grams of lactose in one sitting. So that's about, a one chew has 25 times less than what can be comfortably consumed in one sitting. And I just mentioned, I struggled with eating enough calcium because I'm lactose intolerant. And so this was a big factor for us. We wanted something that those with lactose intolerance can consume comfortably and enjoyably. So it's fine.
That's wonderful. What about the milk protein casein, if someone has an allergy to that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have, no, they shouldn't be eating our chew because we didn't want to tinker too much with removing certain types or adding this or adding that. So yes, the casein is still intact because we want to preserve the integrity of both the milk protein and the milk minerals that we reformulated into our chew.
Right, not over processed. Right?
Yeah, exactly. The amount of casein that's present in one chew is probably very, very small. But to be completely safe, and if anyone has that allergy or intolerance, then we want to be very transparent, of course. And so, yes, there's casein. And if you have an issue with that, then it's probably not a product for you.
Got it. Okay. What about how are the milk minerals separated from the milk? Is there heat involved? What does this do to the quality of the calcium as you're getting those milk minerals?
It's a really good question, and it's a fascinating technical process. But what we've been able to do is preserve the integrity of that whole milk mineral complex. So the exact ratios of calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, copper, and iron are preserved in their entirety. So what the process does is that it takes out all the liquids, all the fats, 99.9% of the lactose, and it keeps those mineral complex intact. So it's mechanically separated and ultra filtered out of whey. And fortunately, calcium is not, it's a mineral, it's not heat sensitive. So whatever heat is involved, we know that doesn't degrade the quality of the calcium. And also all of the milk mineral complex that we use and then our chews themselves, we third-party test all of it. So we are 100% confident that the amount of calcium, 500 milligrams in our chew, is 500 milligrams in our chew. And there's 2 points to say about that. The first is that we decided to run nutrition facts because I work in food. I know I know and trust the FDA, and I know that FDA does a much better job of regulating foods than the supplements, which is it's a wild world out there. So
Yes.
customers can also rest assured that FDA is regulating our product as a food product. And the second point is because the milk mineral complex is remain intact, when you test for calcium, you test for magnesium, those ratios are not going to change. So if FDA regulates, FDA checks, they don't need to check precisely for all of the mineral components, because if you know it's 500 milligrams of calcium, you know precisely to a T, to a dot, how much zinc, copper, iron, and magnesium are in there. So it has two advantages.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. And third-party testing is one of the hallmarks of high-quality products, right? That's,
Yeah.
Fantastic. And so, so it doesn't affect the quality of the calcium and how that extraction occurs. So it really maintains the purity of that ratio of ingredients and how it becomes bioavailable to you.
Yes.
Yeah. A key thing to note there, like Adrian mentioned, is that minerals usually are not degraded by heat. Vitamins can be. And so calcium is a mineral, and so it's not affected by heat. And then just a note about the third-party testing. It's not standard of care. It's not like mandatory for companies to test third-party for nutrient levels. Most companies, they'll say we third-party test, and they test for absence of microbes and heavy metals. But then that doesn't actually mean that they're third-party testing nutrient levels. That's step further, and one step further that we go, because obviously it's super important that One Chew really does have what we say it has on the label.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, oxalates and kidney stone. So we're going to start with the oxalate kidney stone question, that concern on how that happens, and we'll touch on oxalates a little more as we go here.
Yeah, where to begin? So the concern, there's a lot of misconceptions around calcium oxalate kidney stones. And I'm just going to say kidney stones from here on out.
Okay.
When someone has had a calcium oxalate kidney stone, then the number one recommendation is actually to consume enough calcium in your diet to be a protective factor for not developing those kidney stones in the future. And the reason is because when you're consuming oxalates and when you're consuming calcium, they bind together in the intestine and prevent that oxalate, that stone, from going to the kidneys and then forming that kidney stone. So the misconception that I've seen out there is that people think, oh, I had a calcium oxalate kidney stone, I need to decrease calcium. It's the opposite. You need to make sure you're eating enough calcium, but maybe limit how much oxalates you're consuming. And the key word there is limit. We don't want to eliminate whole food groups like greens, which is most of the foods that have oxalates, like spinach, bok choy, all that. Those have oxalates, but they also have a whole host of other nutrients that's super important for a balanced diet. So limit the intake of those and make sure you have enough calcium so that you're protecting yourself from forming those stones in the future. And then the second part of that is I hear, oh, I took, prescribed synthetic calcium from my doctors, and then I developed a kidney stone. Well, you have to kind of parse it out a little bit. When you're looking at the studies that look at the development of kidney stones or, say, cardiovascular risk with synthetic and dietary calcium, the risks are seen in some studies with synthetic calcium, but not dietary calcium. And that's the real nuance there, is that and that's why, you said you don't take synthetic calcium supplements, and why everybody in major medical institutions recommend calcium from food, because these risks that are possibly seen are seen with synthetic calcium and not dietary calcium.
That's really, really great information. So let me just kind of recap that. So for people who are at risk or who have formed these type of kidney stones, the recommendation to help avoid that is to make sure you have adequate calcium intake so that the calcium binds with the oxalates within your digestive tract, not within your kidney.
Exactly.
And then it just can be eliminated.
Yes, yes, yes.
Wonderfully stated. Very, very helpful. And so that's for these individuals. And we don't need to completely eliminate oxalates because of that, but have that as part of a awareness and balanced with an appropriate amount of food-based calcium.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes. Beautiful summary.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Is there vitamin K in your chew?
Yeah, so there's no vitamin K in our chew, and that's for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that there are certain populations where you have to be a little bit more cautious about vitamin K intake with, and for example, those are populations of people who are on blood thinners because it impacts how well you coagulate blood. If you have arrhythmias, too much vitamin K can increase risk there, and so vitamin K is not completely, it's not for everyone, and so we don't want to exclude whole groups of populations. And then the second reason is because our company, C Nutrition, is a food first company, and so we need to make sure that if we find a vitamin K source, it's from a high quality food source, and that's a little bit hard because again there's nuance with vitamin K. So very briefly, there are many forms of vitamin K. There's K1, there's K2, and then within K2, there's MK4 and MK7. There's a lot of different purposes for each of these subtypes of vitamin K, but generally MK7, which is a form of vitamin K2, has been studied in the terms of bone health. That form of vitamin K is not present in a lot of foods in the Western diet. So it's in a lot of fermented foods like natto and things like that. And so we're still finding a high quality food source for that vitamin K.
Okay, so there may be a future iteration of your product that has that included.
Yeah, we'd love to offer that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. But it's important. I love how you address that. It's important really when we're talking about vitamin K for each person to work with their medical team to determine their specific needs and the safety factor for vitamin K. Yeah.
Very much so.
All right. Okay, so when people hear some of the studies about supplemental calcium, they talk about calcium going in the soft tissues or in the arteries and being bad for the heart.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that and how that process really works in relationship to how much calcium, and does it matter if it's synthetic or food-based?
So we see common themes here. There is a difference when we're looking at synthetic calcium versus dietary calcium. And that's the same thing with when you're looking at, is there a risk for cardiovascular disease or increased risk there? So in the studies that have looked at dietary and synthetic calcium and cardiovascular disease, what they found I would say is pretty inconclusive because what they're looking at is secondary analysis from randomized controlled trials or observational studies to draw these conclusions that, oh, maybe calcium will increase risk of heart attack or cardiovascular disease. So even in those studies, though, that was only seen with synthetic calcium and not dietary calcium. And that's the real takeaway here. And so the National Osteoporosis Foundation and then the American Society for Preventive Cardiology, they convened an expert third-party panel to look at this exact study. And so they're like, what is the risk of cardiovascular disease with calcium, synthetic and dietary? And so they convened an expert panel from Tufts University to look at this. And what they said verbatim, I'm going to read it out, is that calcium intake from food and supplements that does not exceed the tolerable upper level of intake should be considered safe from a cardiovascular standpoint. So they made a stance here. They looked at all the studies and the evidence, and they said, if you do not consume more than what's recommended in guidelines, then you will be okay. But if you want to go further than that and you're like, well, still, I'm concerned, maybe you'll have risk factors for cardiovascular disease, then it's even more important to consume your calcium from food.
And a note there too is that when they were looking at that study, they were looking at the the tolerable upper limit, which is like 2,000 to 2,500 milligrams a day. And that's one of the philosophies we've taken with our product formulation and development. Sometimes people will complain, they're like, why only 500? Like Viactive has 650. Well, it's for a couple of reasons, but we're also very aware that it's, you know, if you're in your pursuit of health, sometimes people don't understand that more and more and more and more is not always better. So let's say you have a really calcium-rich diet. You're eating a lot of calcium-fortified foods. You're taking a few capsules. Like you can get to that tolerable, you know, it's not impossible to get to that tolerable upper limit. So that's why we're very moderate, conservative. We've only included 500 milligrams because we understand that your diet should compose the majority of your daily calcium intake of 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams. But even at that 2,000, 2,500 milligram level, they're not finding evidence of increased cardiovascular risk.
Okay. All right. This was an excellent part of this conversation. So, I'm going to verify. I see clients all the time as I review their calcium, and they're getting way too much. So, eating a lot and supplementing 1,200 milligrams or more a day. So, yeah, too much, right? So, you can get that upper limit when we're really recommending about 1,200 milligrams a day.
Right.
Wonderful. This incredible consensus, and all the links to the research you're citing will be in the notes below today. Wonderful that the consensus is it's really not considered a cardiac danger, even up to those upper limits. But the more you get from food, the more.
Yes, exactly. And the key thing I want to just highlight there too is that you have to look at your diet as a whole. So it's great. We're focusing on calcium, but you have to make sure that other nutrients are where they need to be as well for the appropriate use of that calcium. So if you're making sure you're getting your 1,000 or 1,200 milligrams of calcium, where's your vitamin D? Is your magnesium where it needs to be? Because calcium moves from the gut to the blood to the bone. And we need to make sure that all those nutrients that play in those factors are where they need to be, not just the calcium.
Right. There's a lot of intermediaries there.
Yeah.
It's like having an orchestra with only trumpets, right? You have to have everybody in concert playing their part. That's what makes the beautiful music.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Any added sugars in your product?
No, we are proud to just use natural sugars from dates to sweeten our product. And as you said, Dr. Moore, that it's not overly sweet. It's just the natural flavor of date that contributes to the palatability of the product. But you'll be surprised in a lot of those chews and gummies. If you look at the supplement facts label, those grams of added sugar add up. And it's not just, if you look at the label, it's corn syrup solids. It's also artificial sweeteners. But no, short answer, no added sugar.
No, and that's one of the reasons I love your product, because it is incredibly palatable. It's very balanced. I hate sweet, like products like that. It leaves a bad aftertaste, and the date in there, it adds to the texture, it adds to the flavor. It's just right. No added sugar. Fantastic. We don't need added sugar, do we? All right. How does the calcium in Scene Nutrition Calcium Chews compare to the calcium in Algae Cal? Product?
We do get that question a lot. And I think it's useful to just think about it from a food and diet perspective first, and then get into the weeds about exactly what kind of calcium source it is. We take this food first. We all three of us take this food first approach. And we use the calcium from milk. Milk, as a food studies scholar, milk is like one of the most well-studied food groups, milk and dairy, in nutrition history. Like, we know the insides and outsides of milk back forth. And we are confident saying that this is really a food first perspective. Now, if you look at the calcium that comes from Algae Cal, yes, it's found in nature, but you have to ask yourself, is this something I would normally consume in my day-to-day diet? As from my perspective, that answer is definitively no. Like, this is not the seaweed that you get in sushi or the foods that are typically eaten when you're thinking about kelp or algae or seaweed. This is a very particular kind of algae that is found in these, they look like these little balls, and they're not in any traditional diet. So yes, it's found in nature, but I would not consider it an edible source of calcium.
Okay. Yeah, it isn't really something that most people would typically call food or
No.
have in their normal diet.
No, not at all.
And I think that's where like things can get confusing because certain things are labeled natural. Well,
Right.
what's natural? Yes, it's found in nature, but it's not something I'm going to naturally eat.
And
arsenic is natural, right?
yeah. And there's no culinary tradition of this particular species or order of algae. So it's not like sometimes you think, oh, there must be some culinary tradition of using this because it is a rich source of calcium, but no, that's not the case for this particular species and order of algae.
Okay. And one of the other things with the Algae Cal product is their strontium and how does that impact bone? Is that something that is important to have in your supplement? What are your thoughts on strontium?
So if we go back to our chemistry class in high school, if you imagine the periodic table, we have calcium, and right below it is the element strontium. So it's a heavier element. So what does that mean? It means that if you consume strontium via a supplement, strontium citrate, ranolate, which is off the market now, what happens is that because it's in the same row as calcium, it can actually displace calcium in its biological activity. So what that means is that it'll go into your bones and your bones will appear denser. So if you go get your DEXA scan after consuming strontium for 3 months, your bone density will probably be denser or thicker, right? Because
that has great potential for that because of that particular
so your
heavier
is displacing the lighter calcium and making your bones appear denser via DEXA scan. But does that actually mean that your bones are stronger? And that's the real question there. And I think we both know the answer to that. The answer is no. Bone strength is multifactorial. You need to build your muscle, focus on mobility. You know this the best. But so there's kind of nuance there. And if you also just take a step back and look at the human skeleton, 99% of the calcium is stored in our skeleton, not strontium.
Right.
So it seems, in our alluding to our previous question, it seems unnatural to have strontium in those levels in your bones.
Right. That really isn't how the bone physiology is made. But in the presence of extra strontium may place itself there instead of calcium.
Right.
And so is that what we really want to be doing?
No.
All right. Thank you. That was a really great explanation of that. Let's talk a little bit about the milk product that you get to make your product. Is it antibiotic free? Is it hormone free? How is that tested?
Yes, it is both free of RBST and RBGH free. One interesting fact about where we are geographically, we live in upstate New York near Cornell University. So we source our milk protein locally from Auburn, New York, from a cooperative of local dairy farms. So all of our products are US based and our milk is definitively RBST and RBGH free.
Fantastic. I love that. So supporting local farmers in your community, knowing absolutely the source of your product, how the animals are treated and raised, and how you get that milk from them. That's such a great partnership and relationship.
It's nice to support the local community, and it's gorgeous. Like out there in the dairy farms, it's just like what you would imagine where you'd want happy cows to live.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. I've visited that area and totally agree. It's one of the more beautiful places in the country for sure. All right, let's talk, if you're willing, a little more on oxalates, kind of taking a deep dive on, people will have the assumption that oxalates bind with calcium and prevent calcium absorption. So any oxalates in your food will absolutely erase the benefit of any calcium you're getting. That's the perception that's often seen in this absolute on or off switch of absorption of nutrients in the presence of oxalates. And you gave a wonderful reply in the private Facebook group about, the source of the oxalates in the food and different food sources. So could you go ahead and just elaborate a little bit on that? Because I really want to help people understand that it's much more nuanced, and we have a lot to benefit from foods that may have oxalates in them. There are other very healthful nutrients, which you've already addressed before.
Yes. So you hit it right there. There's so much nuance when we're looking at oxalates and calcium in particular. Where you have to look at the food sources, where the oxalates are coming from, where the calcium's coming from. Are they from the same food source? Are they from different food sources? And then what exactly is the calcium oxalate complex, right? So there's a lot of nuance there that kind of gets lost, and understandably so. So I kind of think of it in this big frame, and that is if you are concerned about oxalates decreasing calcium absorption, and both of those are coming from food sources, the interaction between the oxalates and the calcium absorption is going to be very minimal. There was a study that I'm sure you're going to link that looked at specifically giving people an oxalate complex and then having them eat that with milk. And what they found is that there was no interaction between the oxalate complex and milk, which was very like, what? I thought oxalates decrease calcium absorption. Well, it can.
So these were two separate sources digested together.
Yes.
And it did not interfere with the milk calcium absorption.
Yeah. So, yeah, right. Which is people are like, no, I thought oxalates do decrease calcium absorption. And it might in certain other foods, or it might if you're talking about synthetic calcium. Again, there's a difference there. So when we're looking globally, I would not worry about oxalates decreasing your calcium absorption. If you can consume foods and it helps you eat those foods more, then I would do it, because the benefit of eating those foods outweigh the possible minimal risk, right? And so don't worry about eating spinach with a yogurt or putting cacao nibs in your yogurt. Or it's going to be very minimal. We only see maybe risks of this in extreme diet cases, where people are going way high on oxalates and way low on calcium or things like that.
Imbalance,
Yeah, and the general population, eat a balanced diet. And if you're going to have some oxalates, don't worry about it when you're consuming calcium.
Yeah. I think it's very understandable to be concerned about this, because there's both, I think we've all mentioned this, but there's a lot of nuance that gets glossed over, because the human body is a complicated thing and we're also individual, and it's difficult to make these wholesale recommendations. So, I mean, it sounds trite, but it's true. Like, it's important to talk to your doctor to truly understand these concerns. And, you know, it's not, there's just a lot of misinformation on the web, and your group does such a good job of, you know, sticking to the facts. So we understand these concerns, and we can assure you that, like, we've looked into the science, and we're very confident in these answers.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I think it's so much of a all or nothing mentality. And one of the things that I usually recommend in my group when people talk about that is, oh, can I eat spinach because it's high in oxalates? And I say, yes, I eat spinach, but I don't have a spinach salad every single day. That variety in how we source our plant-based foods with other calciums to me, that's what makes the biggest difference. So I don't worry about the oxalates, because I'm getting such a varied source of nutrition that it's not going to be a super high amount in one category or another.
Exactly. I think the balance is the key thing there. And so maybe you're going to ask this next, but I'll bring it up, is that people say, well, almonds are high in oxalates. How come there's almonds in your calcium chew? Well, almonds are also the nut that has the highest amount of calcium in the nut group. And if you really break it down to the amount that we have in one little chew, it's very minimal. And so do I think that the oxalates may be present in the in the almonds will decrease the calcium absorption? No, I don't think it's going to impact it in the long run when you're looking at your diet more globally.
Yeah, in the big picture and in the concentrations that it exists in, it's really not a factor.
Yeah. Oh, and then also, if you were at risk of developing these kidney stones that we talked about previously, it's actually also recommended to consume your oxalate-containing foods with calcium. So if you're eating R2, which has almonds and calcium from milk, then maybe that's a protective factor there, and then you can consume some almonds.
Very, very, very good. That's a nice point to kind of finish that one on. Yeah, it is a complex topic.
Yeah.
And I like how, Adrian, how you talked about it being very nuanced, because nutrition is individual. And I think we're going to continue to see a growing effort for precision nutrition that is really for each person. And people tend to think that it's all, you either need to be paleo or vegan or whole foods plant-based, or, I mean, there's so many varieties out there. And the fact that no one has really risen to the top, other than maybe Mediterranean diet, tells us that there's really a lot of variability in all of our physiology on what works best for us.
Very true.
Yeah. So there were a lot of people that said, "Oh, I wish this was vegan." Is there, I know this is your first product and you're working on really making it the best that it can be, but as you look ahead into the future, what sort of future products do you consider?
Well, we kind of talked about the vitamin K. I think it would be great for us to have maybe an extension that allows people who are safe to consume vitamin K that option. We just have to find that food source, and then it would be great to find a vegan source of calcium. Yep. It probably won't be a little tiny bite because that's hard to do, but maybe some form of food-based, plant-based.
Yeah, you got to squeeze a lot of broccoli for that.
Yeah, calcium is a bulky ingredient. So if we are actively looking at vegan sources, but expect maybe a bar.
No, that makes sense.
We're very fortunate that milk is such a nice concentrated form of calcium. We're able to make it into a smallish bite. But yes, we have it on our radar and we are actively pursuing it.
Wonderful. It's my understanding that you're back in stock and product.
Yes.
That's wonderful. I will share links to the studies that you discussed. They will be in the comments. There will be an affiliate link for purchasing for anybody that wants to go to your website and look at purchasing Choose. And you have been very generous in offering my subscribers and followers a discount. So that discount code will also be linked below. And if they want to reach you, what's the best address to reach you guys?
Yeah, the best email for us is hello, HELLO, at Seen, SEEN, nutrition, NUTRITION.com.
All right. We will be sure to include that in the comments as well. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just want to express my gratitude for you, Dr. Moore, and your community. You all have been so supportive. And if anyone has questions, please reach out. We're in the Facebook group, or you can email us at that email that I just said. We'd be happy to answer questions.
Well, Dr. Han, Adrian Bitar, I thank you both so very much for joining me. I really, truly appreciate your product as the first food-based support for bone health and calcium. And I look forward to further discussions and supporting women-owned business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me.